I want to start with what's going on with Oracle, down close to 5% in the after hours. The company reported adjusted revenue for the second quarter that met the average analyst estimate. Adjusted revenue coming in at $16.06 billion. Cloud revenue coming in at $8 billion. What's your initial reaction here, and why are we seeing the stock lower?
So when you look at Oracle results, as expected, the backlog or the bookings numbers was very strong. That's been over 500 billion right now. But the realization of some of that into revenue, onto cloud revenue, it was slightly lower than what Street was expecting. And one reason for that could be supply constraint. They may not have the necessary chips or equipment to fulfill that demand. So I think there is going to be a lot more discussion on the call about it. On the other side, there was a little bit higher Capex as well. So for Oracle right now, I think the backlog or the order book does not matter. What really matters is how can they convert that backlog into sales over the next few years.
All right, so you're talking about the RPO growth, right? And we are getting another headline that says it's aided by commitments from Meta and NVIDIA. I mean, in terms of where this commitments or these, order flow continues to come from, does it matter that it still is so concentrated in the hyperscalers?
Well, as far as the concentration is concerned, really depends on who's committing those promises. If the promises are for somebody like a Microsoft or an Amazon or somebody else like Meta, it does make sense because they actually have the cash flow to support it. But the big question for everybody is, if these out of that 300 plus billion commitments are from OpenAI, where does OpenAI have the money to fund a lot of this expansion? Now, OpenAI thinks over the next few years they can get to that point where they can then spend that money. But in terms of certainty for an investor, I think you're better off when the commitment is coming from a Meta or a Microsoft.
Hey, Anurag, can we assume that those folks that continue to invest in OpenAI, they have looked at the books, they understand the financials of OpenAI, because it is not a publicly held company. And we know there are some big time investors, including Microsoft, in that company and others. But can we assume that there's a real business there, even though there's a lot that we don't know about it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a real business. I mean, 900 million users. And for ChatGPT, this is the biggest consumer app out there when it comes to AI tools. So there's definitely a real business there. But the big question is, do they need to spend, 300, 500, 700 billion down the road in order to train their models? That's an area where we are not sure how that translates into future revenue.
I'm looking for the word debt in the press release coming from Oracle. I don't see it anywhere, Carol. But not too surprising, I think, that
I'm sure it'll come up on the call.
It'll definitely come up on the call. But how should investors be thinking about Oracle's debt position? Because that was a concern a few weeks ago, and we saw CDS valuation as a result.
Yeah, see, when you look at the size of their order book, they just cannot fund it themselves. It's just not possible given the free cash flow that they generate. So they have to do something called a special purpose vehicle, where you'll have a private equity player, you will have private debt, and then you will have investments from maybe SoftBank or on the others to create an entity that can fund a lot of the Stargate orders that are flowing in. So it is going to be a little more complicated than straight out going to the debt market and raising capital.
I know, because at some point I always wonder, when there's a lot of debt being created and there's a lot of investors involved, how much are willing to throw more money at it to make sure that it all plays out, right? Because the nervousness of it not happening, maybe because just of a shortage of capital.
Yeah, but Carol, if you look at it, when they last came out in the market, the news that we heard was it was oversubscribed. These companies are not having at this point any trouble raising capital for the data center expansion.
All right, let's go to Adobe.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what's going on with Adobe right now. The company gave a strong sales growth outlook. It eased concerns about AI. The company giving an outlook for revenue in the coming year that topped analyst estimates. It suggested that AI features are helping fuel growth of its creative software business. Just looking at shares of Adobe in the after hours, they are kind of unchanged. They bounce around a little bit, but right now down about 0.3%. What do we need to know about Adobe's report?
Adobe's management needs to just come out and say we are executing properly. They are, I always say, not worried about AI cannibalizing their business. Their margins were very strong this time. What they promised a year ago, they actually fulfilled it. For the next quarter, they are talking about 10% growth in the overall company annual recurring revenue. So I think overall good results, but this is a company where honestly the sentiment is so negative. No matter what they do, they just can't get a break.
Hey, listen, the story today too, Anurag, is that ChatGPT users can now use Photoshop and other creativity software from Adobe directly within the chatbot. So we're looking at OpenAI continuing to bring kind of third-party apps into its product. Sounds like a plus for Adobe, is it? And where is Adobe's role in the AI world? Where does it exactly fit in? Is it like an add-on or what?
Yeah, so when you look at, I think the biggest threat, the reason why Adobe stock has not been able to recover over the past 2 years is the biggest threat is a lot of their main products, their cash cows, whether it's Photoshop or some of the other video editing tools. People are saying, I can go to an open source model and create a lot of that myself. Now, we don't think there is a reason to have Adobe down the road because of workflow issues and how you edit those things and how you manage that. But that is the threat. And I think the only thing that can help them is if they consistently execute like this for next several years and showcase that their own AI products are gaining momentum and they're working closely with people like OpenAI and people like Google. I think they're both integrating those models into their workflow also.
Yeah, that's hard though, because I mean, in Adobe, what they want to do is they always want to come out and say, our images and what we create are commercially safe. So what essentially that means, the translation is that if you're a creative and you're working on an ad campaign for a company, you're going to know that whatever Firefly or whatever Adobe product you're using, whatever it spits out, is something that you're not going to get sued over. And that's not necessarily the case with the other Gen AI models.
No, I agree. But if you think about it, there is a case that if there is a pyramid of customers, on the top you have the enterprise customers who are very concerned about it. But it's possible at the base layer, there may be customers, either they're individual users or very small companies.
That's a good point.
They don't really care about it.